All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people, just like you right there, and just like me right here. Steve Perry has settled his lawsuit with Phil Brown outside of court, kind of. I mean, it was in court, but then they went into a room and negotiated, and now it's settled. Former Journey frontman Steve Perry's court battle with a former collaborator over unreleased demos ended with a settlement on Tuesday after an LA federal judge asked the pair to go into a conference room and come out with a resolution. U.S. District Judge John F. Walter said he didn't stop believing, oh boy, that the two-year-old federal civil complaint could be resolved if the parties would simply agree to talk it out. Can't believe he actually said he didn't stop believing. I think they just wrote that in. It's in nobody's interest to continue this litigation, the judge said before making the request of Perry and Phil Brown, with whom the ex-Journey singer collaborated in the early 1990s to write and record 4 songs in the defendant's garage. Still kind of weird how these songs were recorded in Phil Brown's garage. But, Perry, he's kind of like that. He would probably just show up at someone's house and say, "Hey, let's jam. Let's put some ideas together." The judge said you ought to go outside and have a full, frank discussion and try and resolve this case. Walter said 4 hours after the non-jury trial began and the sides rested. He says, "I don't think this kind of litigation serves anybody's purpose." So the judge was kind of having none of this, which is interesting because maybe he just thought that these guys, neither of them had a very strong case. The duo returned about 90 minutes later, announcing through their attorneys that a confidential settlement had been reached to the parties' mutual satisfaction. The judge said he would dismiss the case after lawyers filed a few more briefs outlining the resolution. "I'm absolutely delighted that the case has settled," Walter said, coming down off the bench to thank the litigants. Shaking Steve Perry's hand, the judge said, "Have a safe journey." Or should I say trip, the judge said, smiling at his perhaps unintentional reference to the singer's former band. This is actually kind of a comical story here. Attorneys for both sides declined comment outside of court. Of course, Phil Brown, he tried to kind of make this into a big deal. Perry sued Brown in federal court 2 years ago for violation of his publicity rights, alleging the musician planned to release rough takes of the songs. The 71-year-old singer claimed he never wanted the demos issued and alleged that he and Brown agreed that Perry had control of the work. According to Perry, Brown, who played briefly with Little Feat and had written songs recorded by Cher and Pat Benatar, claimed a copyright interest in the recordings in 2002 and made plans to release them, but then did nothing. However, after Perry released his third solo album, Traces, Brown's manager/girlfriend began promoting an album of Brown's songs using photos of Perry and a sound clip from one of the demos. Interesting. So it was the girlfriend. She did this. In March, Walter rejected an attempt by Brown to have the complaint tossed, finding that Perry had shown a reasonable probability of prevailing on his claims. The court also granted a temporary restraining order barring Brown from releasing the material. So if you're a Steve Perry fan, I guess the downside is you're not going to hear this music unless Perry decides he wants to do something with it. Depending on what the settlement is, that's what we don't know. The judge wrote that Brown's unauthorized use of Perry's name and likeness on Twitter and Facebook to promote the guitarist band and album constituted an unauthorized commercial use of the plaintiff's name and likeness in an effort to mislead and confuse the public by capitalizing on Perry's name and reputation. Duh. Perry hates this kind of stuff. Look, when Steve Perry lawyers up, you want to start to like leave the room, and you're going to make sure you muster a good defense of whatever it is that you're trying to defend. Because here's the thing, Steve Perry, he lawyered up against Journey immediately in 1998. When he got off the phone with John Cain, the first thing he did was call his lawyers and say, hey, no, they're not going to go forward without me. And if they go forward without me, they're going to pay. And they've been paying ever since. In fact, Perry made a very lucrative deal with his former band, whereas he gets a portion of their concert revenue and so forth every time they hit the road. Now, what I understand is that revenue begins to decline over time and so forth, and I think it's been declining over the years, but again, from what I understand, it's still a very lucrative deal. So Perry doesn't have to do anything. Arnel Pineda can do all the heavy lifting and burn out his vocal cords while Perry sits back and hangs out in his home studio and records more fantastic music for the rest of us to hear. So there you go. Steve Perry, Phil Brown, the lawsuit is settled, kind of in court, out of court, sort of in and out, but anyway, it's over. And my guess is that Perry is probably going to sit on these songs. I don't think he's going to do anything with them, because I think he's still going to retain the rights to them, because it's Steve Perry. Nobody would care about Phil Brown releasing music if Steve Perry wasn't a part of this, and Perry probably doesn't think the material is worth listening to or is up to the standard that he would like, because again, he's a stickler, he's a perfectionist. So yeah, so that's the lawsuit. All right, hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to these videos. Hit the bell for notifications. The channel is doing fairly well these days, and I appreciate everyone who has also signed up for Patreon for $1 a month. Access to yours truly, conversations about music, politics, whatever you want to talk about, sports. I don't really care. I don't know too much about sports, but I do like Huey Lewis and his album Sports, so just kidding. His new album, by the way, if you're going to check out Huey, after Sports, Here Comes the Weather. You got to check out his brand new album and maybe purchase a copy. Help Huey out since he's got that hearing issue. All right, folks, I'm done. Thanks for watching. See you soon.